Good evening, world. It's Ivan O'Mara. Well, I slept for 6 hours. I overslept a little bit. It's 5 o'clock in the evening right now, pretty much. It's 4:50. Obviously, so I'll make a final video, a nice 1 hour one. I might make a 1 hour, 1.5 hour, or I might make a full 1 hour 40 minute video. It just depends how long I can go on. Hope you guys enjoyed my recent video that I uploaded a couple hours ago. My second video, obviously, I talked about Return of the King, why I think it's the worst, obviously, in the series. You have the messy CGI, and what you have the rush wars, and the battles do not feel like the final battle of Middle Earth. You see what I'm saying? Remember in the end of Two Towers when Ganon was like, the battle of Isengard is over. The battle of Middle Earth has begun. You would think it would be something like epic on a grand scale, more epic than Two Towers, Helm's Deep, but it wasn't, man. Helm's Deep was a more epic grand scale war than the wars you got for Milthra. And the orcs in Return of the King did not feel, they weren't that scary. They weren't as formidable opponents compared to the Orc-hai and Two Towers. You see what I'm saying here? It didn't really feel like the final battle of Middle Earth when you watch Return of the King, in my opinion. Return of the King was still a masterpiece, though. Peter Jackson still did an amazing job. Return of the King, it's a good movie, obviously. It's a masterpiece, but in my opinion, it's the worst of the three. I don't like it as much as Two Towers and Fellowship of the Ring. I just don't like it, man. As much as the other, obviously. But I told you, even though Return of the King is the worst of three movies, Lord of the Rings, when you watch all three movies are all really good movies. You see what I'm saying? Well, Return of the King is pretty good. Two Towers and Fellowship of the Ring are really, really good, and Return of the King is pretty good. They're all three movies. My point is, all three movies are all masterpieces. You see what I'm saying? Whereas when you watch The Matrix, not all three of them are masterpieces. The first one's a masterpiece, whereas the second one's okay. The third one wasn't that great. You see what I'm saying? That's why when you compare Lord of the Rings to all these movie trilogies, Lord of the Rings stands the test of time. That's why I truly believe, objectively, in terms of quality of storytelling and art, for film, obviously, Lord of the Rings objectively is the best movie trilogy ever made because it stands the test of time. Obviously, you see what I'm saying? There's a reason why this book that I'm reading right now, this is one. Side Field is known as like a guru of screenwriting, guys. Go on Google and search best books for aspiring screenwriters, and this book will show up. The book's by Side Field, Screenplay: The Foundations of Screenwriting. There's a reason why he mentions Lord of the Rings in this book. Yeah, man, because Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece. He mentions other movies, obviously, but there's a reason why he throws in the Lord of the Rings movie. Yeah, because Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece, man. It's the best movie trilogy ever made. In a couple minutes here, I'm gonna go upstairs and get a coffee. I made a fresh batch of coffee. The coffee's brewing, and I made a fresh batch of coffee. So in a couple minutes, I might get a nice fresh cup of coffee. Around 10-15 minutes, I'll get a nice cup of coffee. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I'm not kidding around. In my opinion, don't hate me, world. All you movie critics, you know what I'm talking about. When you watch Lord of the Rings, you compare it to all these other movie trilogies. I'm talking about movie trilogies here. It is the best movie trilogy ever made. I saw Fellowship of the Ring a couple days ago. I saw Two Towers. I was so hooked. I'm like, holy shit, this movie's sick. Yeah, this is a masterpiece. The language of the elves. You see Aragorn speaking his language. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yeah, this is a masterpiece, man. I don't think anything can top this. Yeah, man. It's a masterpiece. Harry Potter, I heard, was pretty good, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. I know some people like Harry Potter better, but it's not better than Lord of the Rings, man. You see a huge quality. Like, it's good, Harry Potter, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. Transformers was amazing. Obviously, the Transformers trilogy was really good, obviously, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. You see what I'm saying? Twilight was pretty good, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. Terminator was good, but you look at the trilogy, it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. You know what I'm saying? You can argue Terminator 2 is better than Lord of the Rings if you want. I kind of like Terminator 2 better than Return of the King. See, not Return of the King is better. But Terminator is no. Well, Terminator, you only have two movies, right? Because the third movie is not really a trilogy. I mean, the third movie wasn't that good. Rise of the Machines wasn't that good, obviously, and the first two movies were good, obviously. The second one was the best one, Terminator. You know what I'm saying? You have The Godfather. The first two movies were good, but the third one I heard wasn't that great. You know, all these trilogies that you watch, they don't have the consistency that Lord of the Rings has. You know what I'm saying? Usually they have a good like two good movies in the trilogy, and then like one or two good movies in the trilogy, and like the next two of them or one of them are not that great. You know what I'm saying? The Matrix, the first one was a masterpiece. The second one was okay, and the third one wasn't that great. You know what I'm saying? That's why it doesn't top Lord of the Rings. The Godfather, I heard the first two were good, and I heard the third one wasn't that great. I came out like 30 years ago. The third one, heard the third one wasn't that good. Yeah, The Godfather doesn't top Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Transformers, all three movies were good. The first one was good. The second one was good. The third. Ivan, what's your favorite of the three? My favorite of the three is probably the third one. Obviously, Darker than Moon. And I like the second one. I like the first one. I think the first one's the worst in my opinion. The Transformers, obviously, but Transformers is good, obviously, but the story's not as good as Lord of the Rings. You see what I'm saying? It's not as good. Entertaining though, very entertaining, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. You see what I'm saying here? When you think about it and you start comparing all these trilogies, Lord of the Rings takes the crown, man. Yeah, it's the best movie trilogy ever made. Now, I mentioned all the big movie trilogies that came out. Star Wars, the originals were good, obviously, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. As Return of the Jedi, in my opinion, is a little goofy. And Return of the Jedi wasn't that great. It wasn't that great of a movie. You know what I'm saying? It was okay. It was not bad. It's, in my opinion, it's the worst of the three movies. Return of the Jedi. You have the Ewoks. I thought the George Lucas having the Ewoks in Return of the King was a little goofy. Those beings. Yeah, that was goofy. Oh, Luke kicks ass in it, but the Return of the Jedi, in my opinion, is the worst of the three movies. I didn't like it as much as Empire and New Hope, or Star Wars. Right, I didn't like it as much as the other two movies. And when you watch the original Star Wars trilogy and you compare it to Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings takes the crown, man. It's better than the original Star Wars, and it's better than George Lucas prequels, obviously, and it's better than the fucking sequels. As the prequels were not the greatest of the trilogy. The prequels were pretty good, but I wouldn't. The prequels are not better than the originals, and my God, the sequels are not better. The prequels, in my opinion, are better than the sequels. The sequels are a mess, and what? And the sequels are not better than Lord of the Rings. My God, Star Wars sequels are not better than Lord of the Rings. See what I'm saying? What other movie trilogies I can think of? Born Identity was a trilogy too. It's not better than Lord of the Rings. Yeah, man. All these trilogies I can think of, they're not better than Lord of the Rings. There's other, you know what I'm saying? Narnia, The Chronicles of Narnia was okay. It was pretty good, but it's not better than Lord of the Rings. Lion and Witch in the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian were pretty good. Lion and Witch in the Wardrobe was a good movie. Prince Caspian was a pretty good movie too, but whereas Voyage on a Treasure wasn't that great. Narnia does not top Lord of the Rings. It's a good movie, obviously, but it wasn't as good as Lord of the Rings, guys. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't as good as Lord of the Rings. I can keep going on. What other trilogies I can think of? What other trilogies that came out? What other trilogies that stand out during the last, I don't know, 20 years that came out? There's a lot of trilogies, you know what I'm saying, that came out, but none of them top Lord of the Rings. Yeah, man. Ivan, what do you think is the closest trilogy to Lord of the Rings? The closest trilogy to Lord of the Rings is probably Star Wars, the originals, but it doesn't top Lord of the Rings. Transformers. Transformers was an amazing trilogy too. Those are good movies. The first three, anyways, whereas the other ones weren't as good. You know what I'm saying Transformers is up there, obviously. You can argue The Godfather. The first two movies were good, were really really good. Those are masterpieces, obviously. In my opinion, The Godfather is a little boring. It's a masterpiece, but the movies are a little. It's not a movie I can see many many times. The Godfather. It's a little the story. It's a masterpiece, obviously, but the story is a little boring sometimes when you watch it. It's a little slow sometimes, obviously. But I personally like the Star Wars originals better than The Godfather, in my opinion. The Godfather's up there for me. It's definitely my top five best movie trilogies. The Godfather. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, the Star Wars. Star Wars is probably the one trilogy that comes pretty close to Lord of the Rings. You can argue Transformers comes pretty close too. Harry Potter, you can argue too, comes close. Harry Potter, I heard, was really good. The ending was really good. Obviously, it was popular, man. It made like $1 billion. All movies made almost $1 billion each for Harry Potter. It's popular, but it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter, guys. I know some people like Harry Potter better, but it's not better than Lord of the Rings, man. It's not. It's not better than Lord of the Rings. I'm saying. I believe personally, objectively speaking, Lord of the Rings is the best movie trilogy ever made. In terms of individual movies, you can argue the Godfather one's better, obviously, than the Lord of the Rings movies. You can argue the Matrix one's better than the three individually one of the Lord of the Rings movies. You can argue Star Wars and Empire better than Lord of the Rings movies if you want. I don't think it is, but you can argue it's better. Obviously, you see what I'm saying? But as a trilogy, Lord of the Rings takes a crown. Because all three movies are like cinematic masterpieces. Even though I like Return of the King the least, I think it's the worst of the three movies. All three movies are masterpieces. They're all really, really good movies. They have that consistency. Whereas all these other movie trilogies, they don't really have that consistency. Like the original Star Wars, you have Empire and Star Wars, and then what? And then the Return of the King, you see a drop in quality when you watch it. It wasn't that great of a movie, Return of the King, in my opinion. A lot of people like it the best, but it's not the when you watch it's not the best movie, man. It's a little goofy. You have the Ewoks, you know what I'm saying, and the story with Luke trying to bring his father back. He goes to the place, obviously, he tries to bring his father back and he fights. It's a good story, obviously, but it's not as good as Empire and Star Wars, you know what I'm saying? Trust me, when you watch Return of the King, it's the worst of the three movies. So the only thing cooler about it is that you see Luke um, kicking ass. He's a trained Jedi. And he kicks ass. That's the only thing cooler about it. But like, if the story, I like Empire better, and I like Star Wars and New Hope better. You know, yeah, man. Lord of the Rings. Ivan, how do you know a movie is objectively the best movie ever made? If it stands the test of time. If a movie stands the test of time for decades, obviously that's how you know it's an objectively what better movie. I know a lot of people say, well, Ivan, like everyone's subjective to their own opinion. Yeah, you can be subjective to your own opinion, but you can also be objective to your own opinion. As in my opinion, you can objectively say movies are better because does that movie stand the test of time compared to the other movies? And in my opinion, Lord of the Rings stands the test of time. And that's why I truly believe it's the best movie trilogy ever made in recent in history. You know what I'm saying? As I have yet to see any movie trilogy top Lord of the Rings. No trilogy has topped it yet, man. Except for Zanus. Zanus will top it by a margin. Because Zanus is a better story than Lord of the Rings. You know what I'm saying? Zanus is a better story than Lord of the Rings. And Zanus will top it, in my opinion. Not in my opinion. I believe it really will top it by a margin, obviously, because Zanus is a better story than Lord of the Rings. Okay. But it'll be close. But I told you, the only way Zanus will top a movie trilogy like Lord of the Rings is if you do it everything right. Stay away from that that full CGI look. You know how Lord of the Rings of Power looks very computery and CGI? Stay away from that, man. Do not have the world look computery like that. No. Otherwise, it will not be better than Lord of the Rings. Obviously, stay away. If you want a movie like Zanus to beat Lord of the Rings, you have to have me acting it, obviously. VJ act as Lithia. You have to have what? You have to pour an unheard amount of money towards the movie. Give Peter an unlimited budget to work with. That way you get an unheard movie. For the world building, you build unheard sets, the costumes, armor, and weapons, the demon mask, the extras, 60,000 extras for the war, the gatherings. Rent the best cameras in the business, the IMAX cameras, the film ones, 10 of them. Rent the best equipment for the cameras, the best drones, lighting equipment for the cameras, and the best what? Camera stands. Put $400 million of your own money towards CGI technology. Obviously. That way you can what? I know what I'm doing. That way you towards world building, the action sequences and horror of the wolves. three demons 3 times scarier than what? Pennywise the Clown, the Orcai in Lord of the Rings, the Ring Race, the Wishing of Agma. I know what I'm doing. That way you get an unheard of movie. And follow the story. If you do that, Zanus will take the edge of Lord of the Rings by a margin. I told you, everyone's subjective to their own opinion. As what? There's some people who might even like Lord of the Rings better than Zanus, obviously. I highly doubt it, though, because I'm acting in the fucking movie, man. Because I'm acting in the movie, it's going to be that much better, obviously. But there's some people who might like Lord of the Rings better, obviously. Some of the movie critics might like Lord of the Rings better. Some of the YouTubers who I watch might like Lord of the Rings better than Zanus. And some of the book critics and Lord of the Rings fans and Lord of the Rings read, the nerds, obviously, they might like Lord J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings book better than my Zanus book. You see what I'm saying? Because everyone's entitled to their opinion, obviously. You see what I'm saying? I told you, I can't see Lord of the Rings topping Zanus. Because pouring all that money towards the movie, obviously, but I told you, just because you pour a lot of money towards a movie doesn't necessarily mean your movie will be better. Because Rings of Power, I heard they're making the show for like, it's like one of the most, it's the most expensive show ever made, Rings of Power. And I saw the trailer and the world looked like kind of cheesy and computery. It looks amazing, but it looks too computery because they relied heavily on full CGI. Rings of Power, you see what I'm saying? The orcs are natural in that movie, obviously, but they're not that scary, obviously. But Rings of Power kind of reminds me of like Game of Thrones. It doesn't really feel like Lord of the Rings that much. And that's why I'm going to tell Peter, stay away from full CGI, man. If you do that, I'm telling you right now, the movie won't be as good. I don't want the world looking full CGI like The Hobbit and Rings of Power. No, I want it looking natural, like you got for Fellowship of the Ring. I know what I'm doing. Stay away from that full CGI look. That's why I want to build big sets and apply the special effects toward the sets. That way your world looks natural. And stay away from the full CGI, full blue screen, green screen. Don't do that, man. There's nothing wrong with having blue screen, green screen, obviously, but build big sets. That way your world looks more amazing. Don't build cheap, small sets, like 0.3 acre sets. No, build a big set. That way your world looks more natural. It doesn't look. Tell Peter that tell the special effects team and Peter Jackson or Mel Gibson, not the way, no, Peter, I want the world looking natural like you got for Lord of the Rings, not computery CGI like The Hobbit and Rings of Power. Tell the special effects team, guys, I want the world looking natural. World looks very amazing, better than Avatar, but it looks natural. Stay away from that computery CGI look. I don't want that for my movies, I'm saying. Stay away from full CGI airtight. No. Have him wear a devil mask like that Annabelle picture I showed you. And you apply the special effects towards the double mask. That way he looks very scary, but he looks natural. He doesn't look too computery, so I'm saying. I'm not a fan of full CGI. CGI technology is good. It makes your world look very amazing, but at the end of the day, it's a computer software technology. So if you use too much of it, your world will look amazing, but it'll look too computery because it's a computer software technology. That's why you need to mix it with your physical effects. The way your world looks amazing. If you build like a 0.8 acre forest and you apply that special effects towards the forest will look amazing in your movie. If you thought Fangoon Forest, for Lord of the Rings, I saw behind the scenes when Pip and Merry were climbing on Treebeard, they only had like a couple trees and they relied heavily on full blue screen, and you got a forest like that. Fangoon Forest looked pretty good in Two Towers, obviously, but like you can only imagine how the forest of Galathia will look because I'm actually building like a 0.8 acre forest. And the actors are gonna, and you know what I'm saying? That's why my forest will look amazing. It'll look unheard of. It'll look natural and amazing. You see what I'm saying? It'll look natural and amazing because what? Because I what? It'll look natural and amazing because I what? Because I poured so much money towards my set building. I know what I'm doing. Stay away from full CGI. Full CGI is only good for like space movies. If you want to do a movie like Star Wars, Star Trek, you know what I'm saying? Movies like that, obviously, that full CGI is good for those kind of movies. Transformers. Well, Transformers didn't look that computery, but movies like Transformers, you can tell they use a lot of CGI for that. Those kind of movies you can film with digital cameras and rely heavily on your CGI technology. Because you have the Transformers. For the Transformers, they had to rely on full CGI for those beings. Obviously, full CGI is good for those movies. Star Trek, Star Wars, Transformers. But for a movie like Zanus, full CGI is not good. Stay away from full. Like Peter Jackson tried the full CGI for The Hobbit, and look at the kind of movie he made. The Hobbit movies weren't that great. They were okay. They weren't as good as Lord of the Rings. You see what I'm saying? They weren't that great. The world looked too computery, man. Especially Battle of the Five Armies. Oh my god, the world looked way too. Oh, yeah, it looked way too computery, man. Way like the city, the war. My god, you know, it looked way too computery. Too computery, man. And I'm like, yeah, this is they relied heavily on too much CGI for this movie. Yeah, compared to Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings looks way more natural. You see what I'm saying? And Lord of the Rings was a better trilogy than The Hobbit. There's some people who like The Hobbit better, but it's not better than Lord of the Rings, guys. The Hobbit's not better than Lord of the Rings, okay? It's not better. It's okay, obviously, but it's not better than Lord of the Rings. Battle of Five Armies wasn't that great, man. That was a bad movie. It wasn't that good of a movie. You see what I'm saying? Return of the King was much better than the Battle of Five Armies. Even though I like it the least of the three movies, it's better than the Battle of Five Armies. Battle of Five Armies wasn't that good. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't that great in my opinion. I saw it in theaters and I was bored to death. Oh my god, this movie is not that great. Destination Smog I enjoy quite a bit on theaters, but what? Destination Battle for Armies I did not enjoy on theaters that much. I thought it was a bit silly, obviously. An Unexpected Journey I didn't watch on theaters, but I saw it on online, obviously, and I enjoyed that a lot too. Ivy, what's your favorite of the three movies? I don't know. I like Destination of Smog the best. You can argue Unexpected Journey is better than the first than the second one, but I like the second one better because that's when you meet Legolas. You meet more characters. You meet Legolas. I love the whole scene when he meets you meet Smaug the dragon, and the hobbits go to that city. I like that scene of Smaug better than Unexpected Adventure. But you can argue Unexpected Adventure is better when Bilbo goes on that adventure with the dwarves. They go through that forest. They find all their weapons. Obviously, he finds Sting. He finds the ring. He plays the riddle game with Gollum. You know what I'm saying? He leaves, and they end up fighting all the goblins in that mine. That was pretty sick. And then Azog and all those orcs, they follow. They follow what? They follow the hobbits to the trees, and they climb up the trees. I thought that was pretty good. But I like Smog a bit better. Destiny of Smog a little better than Unexpected Adventure, to be honest. I'll have my coffee here in a good couple minutes here. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Just like I truly believe Last Hope for Zanes will be objectively the best movie trilogy ever made. As I think it will stand the test of time, obviously. Last Hope for Zanes, once it's released, I think it will be objectively the best movie trilogy ever made. I'm making a prediction. You guys already know what I'm talking about. You can see the future. I have the keys. You know how good it'll be, obviously, and what. And I don't think any movie trilogy will top the Last Hope for Zanes story once I release it. I can't see any movie trilogy topping that kind of story. You can argue individually some movies are better than some of the Zanis movies if you want, but as a whole, trilogy as a whole, I can't see anything topping that for Zanis. But again, a lot of movie critics, you can argue obviously you can argue maybe The Matrix or one of the Lord of the Rings movies are better than some of my Zanis movies. Obviously, you can argue that. Obviously, you can argue The Godfather is better if you want, but as a trilogy as a whole, I can't see anything topping that kind of story. So Zanis is a unique story. There's never been a movie made like that before. Aratat, the King of the South. Ephesus, the king bat of the mountains. Like, it's a unique story, man. Takis is a prince of the north. You know what I'm saying? The south is cursed, the north is holy, like Rivendell. You know what I'm saying? The Southerners live in the animal kingdom, Aratat's territory. He's the king of the south. And Ephesus is the king bat of the mountains. Eli is the leader of Sapphires. Lithia is his daughter. I think something like Eowyn in Lord of the Rings, something like that for Vijay, obviously. You know what I'm saying? Think something like King Theoden for Eli too, except Eli's not a king. He's a leader of Sapphires, but think something like Eli for Theoden, for Eli for Theoden in Lord of the Rings. Except he doesn't accept what? He's not a king, obviously. Whereas Theoden is royalty. He's the king of Rohan, obviously. Whereas what? Eli is not a king. He's not royalty. He's just a leader of Sapphires, but he's rich. He's rich. He's powerful. Lithia is his daughter, just like Eowyn is his niece in the movie. Theoden is Aegon's uncle. I'm saying think something like that for Lithia and Eli. Eli and Lithia relationship, right? Eli is the leader of Sapphires, and Lithia is his daughter. And Eli is rich, obviously, and Lithia is spoiled, obviously. She what? She lives in Eli's house, obviously. She's spoiled. She's rich, obviously. Belle and Mary live with Lithia. They're her friends. Belle is Lithia's best friend, and Mary is her good friend, obviously. You can argue Mary is her best friend too, but if you read the book, Belle is Lithia's best friend, whereas Mary is her good friend. But it's not. And Mary is a couple years older than Lithia and Belle, and three of them are good friends, obviously, and they live with Lithia in her house. I don't mention Belle or Mary's parents in the movie. I don't give any history with her parents or anything like that. All you know when you read the book is that Belle and Mary are Lithia's best friends in the book when you read it. Obviously, and Job is Eli's hired caretaker. When you read the book, Job talks when Job talks to Tacitones and Cassius. He's like, yeah, Eli pays me good wages. That's all I say in the book. In the book, Job tells Tacitonius and Cassius and all of them, yeah, Job pays me very, very good wages. And Job has been a caretaker for Eli for what? For for what? For a couple decades. He's Eli's hired caretaker, and Eli pays him good wages. I don't mention how much he makes, but my guess is he makes, I don't know, 400,000 a year caretaking for Eli. Eli pays Job a lot of money, so Job is rich. And Job also lives in Eli's house too, in the guest rooms. He lives with Eli in his house, obviously. Elizabeth is Eli's wife. She's obviously rich too. Cornelius is Eli's right-hand man, captain of the blacksmiths. He's rich too. I don't really describe Cornelius' wealth in the book, but when you read it carefully, he's obviously rich. He's Eli's right-hand man. He's second in command in Sapphires, and he's the captain of the blacksmiths, obviously. And Eli obviously pays him too, but I don't mention it. Obviously, and Cornelius is rich too. All those Selvins and Sapphires are rich people, man. They're rich, and then Sirius and Papyri are like poor compared to them. They're not poor, but compared to those two groups of people, they're poor. Just like Luke in Star Wars is not poor. He has a home. He lives with his aunt, and he lives in a farm with his aunt and his uncle, obviously. But compared to Princess Leia, he's poor. I just remember that scene. He's like, yeah, she's rich. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, she gives Luke them rewards and all stuff. Yeah, Princess Leia is Luke is poor compared to Princess Leia. You know what I'm saying? But he's not poor. He has a home. He lives with his aunt and uncle. Yeah, it's a similar example for Sirius and Papyri. Sirius and Papyri have a home. They live in Cyrus, obviously. But compared to what the Saphians and the Xanians, they're poor people. And Tactius, Cassius, Tacitones, Lithius, Maramis, and all them, and Queen Sarah, you know what I'm saying? They're all rich people because they're Northerns. And what? Especially Tacitonius and Cassius and Tactius, Lithius, and Queen Sarah, they're reloaded because they're all a part of the royal family. You know what I'm saying? Tacitonius and Cassius are reloaded people. They're rich men. They live with Tactius in his castle, and they inherited wealth because they're part of the royal family. You see what I'm saying? Their mothers, Labia and Anne, are rich. When you read what? When you read Young Tactius, you'll see what I mean, and in prologue, they're rich people. Because Tacitonius and Cassius are Tactius' cousins. Hence, they're part of the royal family. Hence why they inherited wealth. They're rich too, obviously. They're not as rich as Tactius, obviously, because Tactius is a prince of Zanus, and Queen Sarah is the queen of Zanus, and Lithius is her daughter and Tactius' sister. Those guys are really rich. But Tacitonius and Cassius are rich people. I don't explain the ranks of wealth, obviously. I don't explain the ranks of wealth with Cassius between Cassius, Tacitonius, and Tactius, obviously. But it's common sense. Tactius is obviously richer than Tacitonius and Cassius. He's a prince of Zanus. He's the heir of the throne, the northern kingdom, obviously. Queen Sarah is loaded. You'll see what I mean. She gives like people silver and all stuff. And Lithius is her spoiled daughter. And Lithius is part of the royal family. Hence why they're all really, really rich. Tacitonius is loaded. Cassius is loaded, and Tactius is loaded. They're all loaded people. Hence why whenever they meet Job and all them, you'll see what I mean in Volume 2, they make fun of them and all that stuff. They look down on them because Job and all them are not as rich as guys like Tacitonius and Cassius. Tacitonius and Cassius are loaded people. They're rich people. Tactius is loaded. Queen Sarah is loaded. Lithius is loaded. Maramis and all them have money too. They're not as rich as Tactius and them because they're not the royal family, but they're Maramis is rich too. Baramis is Queen Sarah's servant. And Queen Sarah pays him way more than how much Eli's paying Joe. Baramis is a servant of Queen Sarah, and he's loaded too. He makes a lot. I don't mention how much he gets paid, but he's obviously rich. He's Queen Sarah's servant, man. You see what I'm saying? That's why she's rich. I mean, he's rich, obviously. Richer than even how much Joe makes for caretaking for Eli. You see what I'm saying? I'll shut this camera here. I'll get my coffee in the next part. I what? I what? I forgot. I lost track of time here. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Whereas Eretat and Ephesus, I don't describe their wealth in the book. I don't, because they're animals. I don't describe their wealth in the book, obviously. I don't really describe Eretat's wealth in the book. But if you read the book, Eretat has a royal, like, pavilion tent. You know, it's something like Narnia? Think something like that. He has, like, a huge royal pavilion tent. And that's where he lives. He sleeps in the royal pavilion tent. And he has a silver chair throne. All I mentioned in the book is that he sits on a silver chair. Whereas in the movie, I'm going to have Eretat, he has this, like, throne. And he sits on a silver chair in Marat. He's a king of the south, yeah. Obviously, right? But I don't describe the wolves' wealth and bats' wealth in the book, no. Only the humans have the ranks of wealth in the book. You have Tactius. You have the Northerns, who are the richest, obviously, the Xanians. Then you have the Saphians, and the Syrians are the poorest. The Syrians are not as rich as the other two groups of people. Eli is the richest man in the south, and Tactius is the richest man in the north, obviously. He's a prince of Xanus. He's the heir to the northern throne. He's rich and loaded off. You know how the elves in Lord of the Rings are fucking rich? Yeah. Think some of that for Tactius. He's rich, man. Obviously. And the Syrians are gonna wear poor clothing. The Saphians wear better clothing. You know the dress that Arwen wore in Lord of the Rings? Think something like that for Lithia and Bel and all them. They're gonna wear dresses like that in the movie. Like nice dresses like that in the movie. Nice, beautiful dresses like that in the movie. Yeah, man. Something really, really nice. We're gonna wear nice dresses like that in the movie. Yeah, it looks something top notch. Yeah, hence why I'm telling you now, if you apply that kind of story to the big screen, you pour 900 million towards it, 400 million towards the world building, action sequences, the horror of the demon wolves. You had me acting in media actors with you. I can't see Lord of the Rings top that kind of story. But it'll be very, very close, man, because Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece. I'm gonna keep saying that. It will take Lord of the Rings out by a slim margin. Very, very slim margin, Xanus. But Lord of the Rings is going to be close because it's a masterpiece too. You see what I'm saying? Some of you Lord of the Rings actors are making a prediction. You guys might like J.R.R. Tolkien's book better than my Zane's book, obviously, and you might like the Lord of the Rings movies better than my Zane's movie too. As everyone is entitled to their own subjective opinion, obviously. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to shut my camera here.